Let's talk about Starfire. As we've established, Starfire is portrayed to be this dumb, neglectful, uncaring parent, which is completely out of character for her. Mariko Tamaki, a comic writer veteran, failed to write a prominent Teen Titans hero's characteristics correctly, which is completely embarrassing for someone with as many years of experience as her. And just like all the other flaws in this comic, it's actually a lot worse than you realize the more you look deeper into it. We're gonna take the time to show all the relevant scenes regarding Starfire interacting with her daughter. I'm still having trouble saying it. The comic itself already offends the average reader for its toxicity and shameless wish fulfillment. But DC fans especially despise this book, and aside from the obvious reasons I've already talked about, you're gonna understand why it's worse than you think by the end of this video. Let's not beat around the bush and get right into it. The first important scene to point out would have to be Mandy returning home after her first little play date with love interest girl. She quickly rushes home to find some weird old dude sitting in Starfire's obnoxiously pink abode. This guy's Doug, Starfire's date, apparently? Yeah, there's no context into who the hell this guy is outside of that info bubble. He only shows up in just these few pages, then kinda just ceases to exist afterwards. You never see this guy again. Mandy slips into her room with a sour face, and Starfire notices quickly. She takes a peek into her room and asks if anything is wrong, and of course there is. The issue regarding her is that she isn't going to college and she didn't do her SAT. That's the stupid issue, and the only potential conflict between the two. And the way it's played out in these pages is so confusing to me from a creator's perspective. Let me show you how weird this is. Okay, so Mandy goes into more self-dialogue and thought, right? And she says a bunch of pretentious bullshit, so let me just cut to the relevant part. My mom isn't mad at me about walking out of my SAT because she doesn't know. Oh, also, by the way, on this picture, what the hell are these squares in the panel? Do they serve to make the comic page more dramatic? Because it just looks weird. Anyway, she goes on to do this thing where, I don't know, just read this. Fortunately, my mom is many things, but psychic isn't one of them. Watch this. Wait, what? Why? So she says in her own thoughts, that guy is clearly a douchebag, and I ran out of my SAT because I'm not going to college. And obviously Starfire does not hear this, so she's just like, okay, have fun with homework. And that's the whole scene. Yeah, that scene was supposed to try and make Mandy look superior. So, there's a lot to unpack here. So let me just go ahead and ask all the questions as best I can. First of all, what is the point of adding this nonsensical moment of testing if Starfire is psychic into the goddamn scene? Of course Starfire is not psychic. Why the f would anyone think that? I'm assuming that this moment, and probably the rest of the whole comic for all I know, is written under the assumption that you don't know anything about Starfire at all, right? Like, after the scene, I feel like this entire comic was made under the context that nobody knows Starfire's powers or her backstory or anything. That's the only way any of the stuff I've said regarding her, and the stuff that I haven't discussed yet, would be tolerable. But that makes no sense. Who the hell would read this comic not knowing about Starfire when she's literally on the title and cover of this goddamn book? That's your only form of recognition for this book, so only people familiar with Teen Titans would go out of their way to read this. God, this comic boggles my mind every time I try to make some sense out of it. Second of all, Mandy is constantly painting her mother as the very source of her misery, and is constantly demonizing her for insignificant bullshit. And as we've established, you're supposed to root for her. You're supposed to get behind everything she says. And if that's the case, then it's really difficult to root for Mandy pushing Starfire away, when so far Starfire has done nothing but look after her while trying to make sure she has her own life as well. Third question. In her little thought bubble, her first statement is pointing out that this random ass guy Doug is clearly a douchebag, according to Mandy. And my response is, not really? He hasn't done anything to make him seem like a douche. In fact, he has so little screen time that you can't even get a read on the guy at all. From the few pages he's on screen, he seems fine. But hey, Mandy said he's a jerk, so we're all supposed to agree. We're all supposed to stand behind everything she says. The exact same way Mandy hates Claire's friends for essentially no reason, and we're all supposed to agree without question. There is so much tell, don't show in this piece of garbage. Fourth question, and finally, I wish I had brought this up in part 2, but I'm just now realizing this. Why would Mandy be scared of being stuck in college debt? Isn't her mom a rich superhero? I'm assuming she's wealthy since the house she lives in is huge and decorated, and Mandy's school that she goes to is some kind of prestigious ass academy, right? Judging by the mandatory dress clothing and all that. Why doesn't she just have her pay it all off? Look, the whole misunderstood, neglected emo kid narrative really doesn't f***ing work when you're privileged enough to live under a rich and kind lady's roof. I'm just saying, like, Mandy is not a victim of abuse or anything, or bullying, which is what most people under her stereotype actually do have to deal with on a daily basis. Let's go to the next scene. Also, you may notice that this is the only way to get a real analysis on Starfire is by picking apart random scenes. Yeah, that's because Starfire is basically not relevant to the story. I said this already, I'll say it again. Replace Starfire with any other superhero, literally nothing in this plot would change, since Mandy's connection to anything regarding Starfire's lore only matters up until the last possible second when Blackfire appears. And even then, when you add Blackfire into the equation, Starfire is still completely irrelevant. Just swap out Blackfire with a corresponding arch-nemesis of said hero. Nothing would change in the narrative. Anyway, Mandy comes home from hanging around love interest girl's friends, who she hates for no reason, to stumble into her mom suddenly deciding she wants to discuss future educations with her. She dumps a bunch of college brochures in her face like a goddamn cartoon character and pesters onto Mandy what kind of place she has planned. Predictably, Mandy is not happy with this, still not informing her of the fact that she's not going to college for a dumbass reason. So, she gets butthurt, and then this happens. "You don't understand," Mandy says, and Starfire is like, what am I not getting? And then after that, Mandy kind of just snaps out of nowhere in the next page. "Why are you taking on my life all of a sudden?" And Starfire is all like, "Because that is what the responsible parents do." And Mandy's all like, "No, it's the night." Asshole. Starfire understandably gets up and says something is wrong. Mandy goes on to say, "No, nothing's wrong," and then rushes into her room, slamming it shut. After that, Mandy says that she's just doing homework and she can talk about college tomorrow. Starfire kind of just goes, "Okay, good night," even though something is very clearly wrong. Again, completely out of character for Starfire. She would never do this. I cannot imagine in any alternate universe seeing Starfire watch her own child in massive emotional distress, then just tell her, "Okay, sorry, bye." Like, wasn't there like an episode in the Teen Titans cartoon where Starfire had like a pet slug thing and she was taking care of it and then things got complicated? Yeah, there's an entire episode from the OG Teen Titans dedicated to showing her that she would be a proper parent. So what the f*** is this? This is very clearly written this way to make Starfire look bad, am I right? Because she is actively refusing to confront her to make sure everything is okay with her, despite there being something very clearly wrong. But Mandy is the one that continues to push her mom away instead of talking to her over her own insecurities. So how the hell would I look at this and take this pig animal side? Like, there's no excuse for Mandy acting like this to begin with. The insecurity issues, fine, whatever, that's the whole premise, I guess, but there's literally no consequence for Mandy speaking to her about her personal issues. It's not like Starfire is abusive or abrasive or intimidating or anything, and I said this already, but it's pissing me off, so I need to say it again. It's not like Mandy is dealing with any of the shit that actual abuse victims and distant family members actually have to deal with. They very clearly live together peacefully. Mandy cooks for her, they eat together, Starfire holds birthday parties for her. There's no excuses here is what I'm trying to say. Oh, and speaking of birthdays, what happens after her little breakdown where she hides into her room is this stupid ass flashback scene to one of said birthdays. And during that, she goes on to explain that she basically knows nothing about her own mother. Starfire's never told her a single thing about her background, about Tamaran, her family heritage, absolutely nothing. Throughout all 17 years of this girl's life, all Mandy has ever known is the fact that she has powers and that she's famous. What kind of parent does that? I mean, f***ing Omni-Man did that, for crying out loud. I mean, granted, he didn't give Mark the full story at first, but he still told him something. This scene right here is a perfect example of everything wrong with the portrayal of Starfire in this comic. Completely twisted around and out of character, all for the sake of blowing sunshine up the self-insert's lard ass. Okay, so moving along. A few pages later and we're about caught up to where we should be after I left off on part 3. Get ready, guys! This is where the plot happens. Mandy pulls out of school and heads home to find Starfire clearly pissed off. Uh-oh, looks like she found out. Apparently, she got a call from the guidance counselor just now that she walked out of her SAT. Wait, what? Why is a guidance counselor just now informing her of that? I mean, according to the comic's timeline, that was days ago. No, wait, that was even further than days ago, because Mandy explained that in a random flashback when she was talking to Claire at her house for the first time. So it's actually even further away from just a few days ago. Why would that guidance counselor from the beginning of the comic just now tell Starfire something that important? Mandy finally gives her mother the truth. She did not take her SAT because she is not going to college. Starfire finally decides to be an actual parent and demands that her kid make this decision because it's important. Her reasoning, however, is specifically written to make her look stupid. When Mandy asks, "Yeah, well, why?" all Starfire has to retort to that is, cause it's what kids do, and they go to school, and then they go to more schools. Every time she is on screen, she serves to make Mandy look like someone with a superior intellect. It's infuriating. So, would you like to see what she says next? It's something that is... It's actually pretty genuine. Starfire says, and I quote, "It's not life and death for you. You are lucky it is not. But that does not mean you do not have the duty to be the best you can be." I like this line a lot. It's the only thing she said that's been in character so far. So, what's Mandy's response? Oh, she completely ignores her heartfelt message, retreats to her room so she can pack her things, so she can run away because mommy doesn't understand. She stops at a dumpy-ass cafe and tries texting the generic best friend guy so she can crash at her place. Starfire, of course, quickly finds her, and I want to show you guys something on his panel here. Remember when I said I like the art style? Yeah, I'm slowly beginning to change my mind. You see, the background characters in this comic are drawn with background colors. They aren't colored in to emphasize the fact that they're, well, in the background. But in this panel here, those background characters are in the foreground. But still, none of them are colored in. It's really, really distracting to look at. Like, look at how awkward this looks. Mandy hauls her ungrateful ass outside, and her argument continues with her mom. They go back and forth, but I'm not covering any of it because it's all just Mandy venting her ill-conceived frustrations on top of her mom, while also making herself look like a douche. None of that nonsense is important. What's actually important is this. Suddenly, Blackfire appears. Dun dun dun! Oh no, it's the only thing that makes Starfire sorta relevant to the plot of this garbage fanfiction. So Blackfire introduces herself and she wants to kill Mandy for a stake on the throne. I've already talked about how dumb the reasoning for this is. Blackfire goes into a stupid-ass explanation that any heir of Starfire has claim to the throne, even if she left Tamaran, which is stupid as shit and makes no sense. I'm not trying to sound like a DC lore nerd here, I'm just using my common sense, trust me. Why would Starfire be barred from the throne of Tamaran, but a flippin' child that's born on a different planet, light years away, who doesn't even know what Tamaran is, be a threat to your rule? I swear to God, Tamaki must have been in the middle of writing this garbage, not realizing that there's no logical conflict in this entire story, so she just threw Blackfire in to distract you from that. She sends her goons to capture the pair so the epic battle can commence soon. So now, the daughter and the mother are stuck together. So now, finally, Starfire explains to her daughter the background of her life. A brief synopsis, anyway. So yeah, she's gonna explain the old story, right? I remember Starfire's background accurately. Once again, thanks to the cartoon from the early 2000s. And I actually looked up how it goes down in other interpretations as well. In the OG cartoon, Starfire is sold off as a slave by Blackfire and stumbles into Earth after using brute force via her superior superpowers to conquer the planet. There's way more context to that, but I won't get into it. In the comic, Starfire is forced into slavery, once again, and breaks free of her own volition and takes revenge on those who wronged her, stumbling onto Earth via a happy accident. In the animated movies, it's slightly different, but basically the same, for sake of plot convenience and faithfulness to the original. So, what happens in this one? Well, the same thing happens, the beginning part anyway. Blackfire goes ballistic and takes the throne by force, but, in this particular iteration, I'll just read out what she says. After Blackfire conquered Tamaran, she took me prisoner. I escaped. I could have faced her then, but I did not. I had seen her destroy everything I knew. I was afraid. I fled and came to Earth. So she pussied out. She ran over to Earth with her tail between her legs. Mariko Tamaki specifically modified her backstory. She deliberately rewrote her to be a coward that runs away from her problems. Gee, I wonder why so many DC fans were upset after reading this trash fire. I wonder. Just like how she was intent on specifically writing Mandy to be as douchey as possible, Starfire has been slightly reworked to make her as cowardly and uncaring as possible. She specifically says in this page that she could have easily confronted Blackfire years ago when she was still on Tamaran. So, let's get a quick recap. Starfire, the emotional support character of the Teen Titans and the most heartfelt member of the group, has decided to do the following. 1. Have a child with a deadbeat dad that she has not ever spoken of. 2. Never confront or question her own daughter regarding her life issues. 3. Does not seem to care about her life issues up until the last second. 4. Has never ever told her own child about her very public, very significant superhero background up until the last second. And 5. Run away from her life problems and inadvertently place them on her daughter. So, why? That's the only question I have at this point. Why? Why would you intentionally paint her as this unsympathetic person? Why would you intentionally write a well-known, beloved character to be some pussy coward that runs away from her problems? Why? Well, the answer is because she needs to look bad. She needs to look like a careless idiot. She needs to look like an absolute coward. It's the only way this story can make Mandy look misunderstood. You see, Mandy is a completely horrible person, as we've established, but at the same time, she has to be someone we all have to be cheering for. But thanks to her toxicity and the fact that the story is strictly from her perspective, the only way to do that is to make everyone around her look bad, if not worse. Plenty of poorly written stories do this. This isn't rare. This is a super common thing that bad writers do everywhere. For example, there's this one garbage-ass edgelord anime called Redo of Healer or something like that, and the main character is a horrible person and an actual rapist. So the only way the writer thinks he can balance it out, quote unquote, is by making everyone around that rapist MC an even worse person in a petty attempt to make the protag slightly more tolerable. And that's basically what's happening right now. Mandy may be a totally unlikable douche, but at the end of the day, if her distant, selfish parent who never bothered to understand her pain as a coward, that means it's a-okay. So yeah, instead of Tamaki being faithful to the DC universe, she instead butchers everything in a sad attempt to stroke the ego of her own sad mouthpiece. I mean, even Chris Chan's weird-ass Sonichu comic is more accurate to the source material. In the Sonichu comics, the story starts off after Sonic defeats Perfect Chaos, you know, which is the finale from Sonic Adventure. See, look, even that degenerate wacko nutjob Chris Chan has a one-up on Mariko Tamaki. How sad is that? An actual fan fiction could potentially be superior to this work, because at the very least, a cringy fanfic, no matter the subject matter, would actually attempt to be accurate to the source material. And guess what? It gets worse! Through discussing the blatant lore breaking of this character, we have inadvertently reached the finale of this terrible comic. What happens in the epic ending? The dumbest shit possible. You'll see when we get there, and I'm sure YouTube commenters are already talking about how stupid it is. So yeah, stay tuned. I am losing my sanity. To be continued in part 5. And let's not forget our fantastic Patreons who are supporting my work. My current $10 supporters are Duke Dragon Hearthfire the 10th, Ellamations, and Procrastinator Dave. And let's not forget my $5 donors, Ayan, Dragonlight Z, Stormy Knight, Travis, and Wes Franklin. If you'd like to be in the credits of my videos as well, just catch me on patreon.com/blacklightjack. Thanks for watching, everybody.